My best friend is dating my abuser and wants me to reconcile with him, so I kicked her out of my home. I have no family. Not in the sense that people typically understand family to be. Anyway, I have people who share my blood, who carry the same surname, but they never really understood me. Growing up, I was always the outsider. Quiet, observant, the too sensitive, one who never quite fit into the sharp-edged mold that my parents and siblings seemed to have been carved from. I learned early on that silence and solitude were my greatest allies, that keeping my emotions under lock and key was the safest path. Until I met Tammy. Tammy was the first person to see me, really see me. We met in the 7th grade when she transferred to my middle school. She had this bright, infectious energy that could light up a room, something I admired but could never quite replicate. She was everything I wasn't. Loud, confident, unabashedly herself. And for reasons I still don't fully understand, she liked me. She gravitated toward me, dragging me along in her whirlwind of life and laughter until, without realizing it, I found myself laughing along too. With Tammy, I felt safe. For the first time in my life, I had someone who didn't judge me for being quiet or sensitive. She celebrated those parts of me and pulled me out of my shell. She became my person. Through high school, we were inseparable. We were the cliché of best friends, sleepovers, shared secrets, inside jokes that no one else understood. Tammy became my family in the truest sense of the word. We talked about our futures like they were tied together, our dreams interwoven in a way that made us believe we would always be side by side. The idea of losing her was unimaginable. Then college happened, and everything began to change. I didn't want to go to a Christian college. My parents forced me into it. They had always been deeply religious, so much so that it left little room for me to breathe, to think for myself. Their faith was like a suffocating weight around my chest, and by the time high school was over, I was desperate to escape it. But they wouldn't let me go. They made it clear that if I wanted their financial support, I had to follow their rules, and that meant enrolling in a small, conservative Christian college far from home. Tammy, on the other hand, got accepted to a larger, more liberal school in the same town. It wasn't ideal, but at least we'd be close. For the first 2 years of college, Tammy and I were roommates. We rented a tiny apartment off campus. And for a while, it felt like old times, just the two of us against the world. But college has a way of changing people. Tammy embraced the new experiences with open arms, joining clubs, making friends, and exploring her independence. I, on the other hand, struggled. My college was suffocatingly strict, and the students there were so deeply entrenched in their beliefs that I felt like an outsider. I became even more withdrawn, retreating into myself in a way that even Tammy couldn't pull me out of. Then I met Trent. Looking back, I see all the red flags now. But at the time, I was lonely, and Trent seemed like a lifeline. He was charismatic in that effortless boy-next-door way. He wasn't like the other guys at my school. He didn't talk about faith or morality. He talked about music, movies, and adventure. He was charming, affectionate, and he made me feel seen in a way that no one had before, not even Tammy. By the end of junior year, I moved in with him. At first, it was wonderful. He showered me with attention and affection, always telling me how lucky he was to have found me. For a girl who had spent her whole life feeling invisible, that kind of attention was intoxicating. But slowly things started to shift. His compliments became backhanded, his affection laced with criticism. He would tell me I was beautiful, but only if I dressed a certain way, if I lost a little weight, if I acted a little less shy. He would compare me to other girls, hinting that if I didn't change, he might have to find someone who could meet his needs. It wasn't until senior year that the physical stuff started. It was subtle at first. He'd push me out of the way if I was standing in his path, or grab my arm a little too tightly during an argument. Then the slaps came, always during fights, always followed by apologies. He'd tell me I was being too emotional, that I was overreacting, that I needed to toughen up. And I believed him. I believed him because my self-esteem had been ground down to nothing, and I had no one to turn to. When I called home, my parents told me I was living in sin by being with a man I wasn't married to, and that whatever I was going through was a consequence of my own actions. I stopped calling them after that. I told Tammy bits and pieces, but I never fully opened up to her about what was happening. I was too ashamed. Tammy had always been so confident, so sure of herself, and I couldn't bear the thought of her knowing how weak I'd become. Besides, she was busy with her own life, and I didn't want to drag her down with my problems. Then came the proposal. It wasn't romantic or sweet. It was an ultimatum. Trent had been pressuring me for months, telling me that if I didn't marry him, it meant I didn't love him. When he finally proposed, I hesitated, and that hesitation sent him into a rage. He screamed at me, demanded to know why I wasn't jumping at the chance to be his wife. Then he punched the wall next to my head. I collapsed to the floor, terrified. He tried to comfort me after, told me it was my fault for making him angry, that if I had just said yes, none of it would have happened. Then he forced me into bed. I don't want to go into the details, but it was one of the lowest moments of my life. When I woke up the next morning, the engagement ring was on my finger, and I knew I had to get out. I spent the next few weeks quietly planning my escape. I found a women's shelter in a nearby city, started hiding money, and the night after graduation, I left. I left everything: my phone, my clothes, my life. I drove to the shelter and never looked back. Tammy was the first person I told. She was horrified, of course. She helped cover for me when Trent came looking, spinning a story about how I had gone off the grid and didn't want to be found. She was my lifeline during that time, the only person who knew the full extent of what I had gone through. I trusted her with everything. That was years ago. I'm 36 now. Tammy is too. I've spent the years rebuilding my life, slowly piecing myself back together. I moved to Texas, far from the college town where everything fell apart. I have a steady job, a quiet life. I'm not close with my family anymore, but that's okay. I've learned to live with the loneliness. Tammy, on the other hand, found success. She got a job overseas 2 years ago and moved to London. We stayed in touch, video calls, text messages, but it wasn't the same. I missed her deeply, but I was happy for her. She was living the life we had always dreamed of. A few weeks ago, Tammy asked if she could visit me in Texas. She said she missed me, that she wanted to catch up. I was thrilled. I hadn't seen her in person for years, and the idea of spending a few days with her sounded like exactly what I needed. When she arrived, I noticed right away that something was off. She was quieter than usual, distracted. At first, I chalked it up to jet lag, but as the days passed, I started to sense that there was something more. She wasn't her usual bubbly self, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. Then, one night after we'd gone out for drinks, Tammy broke down. She told me she had something to confess. I braced myself, thinking maybe she was in trouble, or that she was going through something difficult. But nothing could have prepared me for what she said. She's dating Trent. She told me it started about a year ago. They ran into each other back in our old college town, and he had changed. He found religion, she said. He'd found Jesus and turned his life around. He deeply regretted how he treated me and wanted to make amends. At first, she hated him, but over time, she saw how different he was. They started talking, then dating. Now they're serious. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. The words were hitting me like punches to the chest, one after another, but I was too stunned to feel anything. My mind went blank, my body frozen. I didn't even have it in me to get angry. I just sat there, staring at her, as she pleaded with me to understand. She kept saying that he wasn't the same person anymore, that he had changed, that he was a good man now. Finally, she asked me to say something, so I did. I told her to get out. She looked at me like I had slapped her. She started crying, telling me that I wasn't being fair, that I wasn't giving him a chance. She said that I didn't have to forgive him, but I needed to see that people could change, that I was being selfish, that I was holding on to the past and keeping her from being happy. But I couldn't hear her anymore. All I could hear was the sound of my own heart breaking. I told her to leave again, and again, until she finally did. We didn't speak for a week. Then I started getting messages from her, from my family, all telling me that I needed to forgive and forget. Tammy said that I was being cruel, that I was the one holding her back, that if I would just let go of the past, they could move forward with their relationship. She even accused me of exaggerating what had happened with Trent, saying that maybe my memory wasn't as clear as I thought it was. I blocked her after that. Now, I'm left here alone, questioning everything. Am I overreacting? Am I wrong for feeling betrayed? Should I have given Tammy a chance to explain herself more? Should I have given Trent a chance to prove that he had changed? But deep down, I know the answer. Some betrayals cut too deep to ever heal.